The ThinkPad X1 Carbon is one of the most established laptops around, and this year's model marks the 7th iteration of the series. Just like every one before it, this X1 Carbon is thinner and lighter than ever. What else is new? Well, there's a brighter UHD display with HDR 400 support, a better sound system, more far-field microphones, and the usual processor and performance upgrades. Oh, and there's an optional carbon fiber weave pattern for those bored with a plain black lid. But these are pretty incremental updates, and rivals like Dell and HP, as well as newer players like Microsoft and Huawei, are giving Lenovo stiff competition. So the question is, are these minor tweaks enough to maintain the X1's reputation as one of the best laptops around? Every time I pick up an X1 Carbon, I'm impressed. The 14-inch laptop may have a no-nonsense, business-only aesthetic, but it feels more luxurious than its exterior lets on. This year, Lenovo added a carbon fiber weave to the lid to update the X1's look a little, and I appreciate the effort to keep things fresh, though you can only get it on the UHD model. More important than the appearance is the material that inspired it. This year's X1 laptop, like its recent predecessors, has an extremely light carbon fiber chassis covered in a gorgeous but somewhat sensitive soft-touch coating. It's sturdy enough to absorb a fall from your arms, but I've had this laptop for just under a week and it already looks a little scuffed up from general use. Those who have a ton of peripherals will appreciate the X1's generous array of connectivity options, which include 2 Thunderbolt 3 USB-C ports, an HDMI socket, 2 USB-A jacks, and an Ethernet extension. That's much more than you'll find on the likes of the Huawei Matebook 14 and Surface Laptop 2, which doesn't even offer USB-C power charging. ThinkPads consistently have great keyboards, and the X1 Carbon once again gets it right. Mostly, anyway. I love the deep travel and comfortable keys, and typing on a ThinkPad feels like a luxury compared to the merely decent keyboards on the Laptop 2 and Matebook 14. But I have an issue with some of the button placements on the X1 Carbon. In particular, I hate where the left control button sits. Instead of being the leftmost button on the bottom row, it's actually the second last, and a function key sits on the end. That might make perfect sense if you're coming over from a MacBook, but as a PC person, I'm used to the arrangement being the other way around, and it really messed up my flow when using keyboard shortcuts. It's really frustrating to think you're hitting Ctrl-Z or Ctrl-C and then V, only to realize your action wasn't undone or your text wasn't copied because you pressed function instead. This isn't a deal breaker, but it's annoying. I also wish the page up and down buttons were a little higher or bigger. Where they sit above the left and right arrow keys right now makes them too easy to hit when I'm trying to jump between words instead of scrolling up or down. As usual on a ThinkPad, there's a red pointing stick sitting in the middle of the keyboard. It's nice to have if you're a fan, but easy enough to ignore. Next to the trackpad sits a fingerprint sensor for quickly logging in. It should be easier to use the Windows Hello enabled webcam above the display, but in my testing, the system failed to recognize me about 30% of the time. It tended to struggle in situations that were backlit, but sometimes it had trouble finding me even if I was sitting an arm's length away, as opposed to, say, being too close to the camera. I don't have as much of an issue with Windows Hello on a Surface Laptop 2, which might be due to its much better camera. Windows Hello isn't ideal either if you're privacy conscious and keep your webcam covered. Though I've got to give Lenovo credit for making it easy to cover and uncover the camera with a built-in shutter. All you've got to do is slide a lever above the screen. Speaking of, I have a small complaint about the display. When using the keyboard buttons to toggle brightness, the increase between each step up is uneven. For levels 1 to 9, the screen gets gradually brighter by about the same amount each time. But from 9 to the maximum 10, the jump is huge and almost blinding. Lenovo told me this is normal for the X1. It might not be a huge issue, but I was confused why the screen was so dim until I pushed brightness to the 500 nit maximum, and the lack of a more nuanced middle ground between the last two options felt limiting. You can get a more specific level of brightness by using the on-screen slider in settings. Other than that gripe, I generally enjoyed using the X1 Carbon to watch Netflix or YouTube videos. Details were always crisp and colors vibrant, if a little on the pink side. Audio was a little disappointing though. Despite packing a new quad-speaker Dolby Atmos system, the X1 Carbon sound was slightly hollow, which has been a persistent problem for the X1 series for a while now. So far, the X1 Carbon and its 8th generation Intel Core i7 processor have managed to handle my daily workload without a hiccup. More texting tasks, like editing photos or spreadsheets, went smoothly. But, and don't tell my boss I did this at work, playing Overcooked was a real challenge, and I saw a significant lag on the UHD model I was using. I don't think the integrated Intel UHD 620 graphics here can really handle serious gaming. The X1 Carbon almost got me through a workday without needing a charge. I unplugged my UHD model at noon, and it wasn't until about 7 p.m. that I got a low battery warning. On our battery test, the lower res Full HD X1 Carbon lasted 14 hours, which is twice as long as the 7 hours clocked by my UHD version on the same test. The higher res model also has a brighter screen, which might have caused more drain. Despite a smattering of small complaints, I'm mostly pleased with the Thinkpad X1 Carbon. It's a strong business laptop that appeals to its diehard fans for good reason. I love the build, keyboard, and performance, and battery life is great if you don't mind a less sharp and less bright screen. For its $1,200 starting price though, the X1 Carbon has serious competition, specifically from the likes of the Surface Laptop 2 and Huawei Matebook 14, which are similarly powerful, albeit arguably more attractive. The Laptop 2 also lasts longer, but Lenovo's appealing keyboard alone may just keep its fans coming back for more. If you want more reviews of laptops, phones, smartwatches, or even self-driving cars, subscribe to Engadget. Thank you for watching.